And welcome to all those community members that we have here in the chamber, but also those who are watching at home. I'm Councillor Frances Eyre, so welcome. Members of the public are advised the meeting will be live streamed and recorded, and the live stream recording will be made publicly available on YouTube and Council's website. Nillumbik Shire Council respectfully acknowledges the Wurundjeri Wurrung people as the traditional owners of the country on which Nillumbik is located. And we value the significance of the Wurundjeri Wurrung people's history as essential to the unique character of the Shire. We pay tribute to all First Nations people living in Nillumbik, give respect to elders past, present and future, and extend that respect to all First Nations people. We respect the enduring strength of the Wurundjeri Wurrung and acknowledge the ongoing impacts of past trauma and injustices from European invasion, massacres, and genocide committed against First Nations people. We acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. Wurundjeri Wurrung people hold a deep and ongoing connection to this place. We value the distinctive place of our First Nations people in both Nillumbik and Australians' identity, from their cultural heritage and care of the land and waterways, to their ongoing contributions in many fields, including academia, agriculture, art, economics, law, sport and politics. We'll now move on to apologies, and we have two this evening. Thank you, Councillor Ramtran.
Yes, I'd like to move that the committee acting under delegation from Council notes the apologies from Councillor Natalie Duffy and Councillor Karen Egan.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Perkins. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. I will ask councillors, do you have a disclosure of conflicts of interest of this item? No? Would just remind you that if something does change before the item, to please just let me know. Confirmation of minutes.
Yes, I'm happy to move the motion as per the papers.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Ramtran. Does anyone want to speak to the motion? No. I'll put that to the vote then. Thank you. Carried unanimously. We now move into consultation matters, which for the most part, most of the people in the chamber are here for, which is the draft budget for 2023 to 24. So we will start by hearing from our speakers this evening, and I will call on Dale Anstis. Good, thank you. Have you spoken before? Yeah, please come, and then also press the button and it'll go green when it's ready. Thank you. And you've got 3 minutes. And the timer, have you spoken before? No. Okay, there'll be a timer. You can see how long you've got.
Ready? Hello. Karratha Ave... Oh, excuse me. Can I move that? It echoes back in me. Karratha Avenue is a narrow gravel road on a very steep hill and connects to Lower Road. Having read the submission, I assume you're alarmed at the level of incidents and are shocked by the photos that are included in it. I note that the officer in charge, they're prepared to look at the maintenance program. The additional grading would be great. But the only problem is it only takes a few weeks for the road to break up. The road is on a steep hill, and that then causes traction issues. That then causes more loose stone, that causes more incidents, and the saga goes on. So to regrade, it needs to be graded every 3 to 4 weeks to make it safe. The council maintenance team have also said to us that the road has too many vehicles on it now and it should be sealed. The officer in charge also suggests that they'll look at in the future to have the road sealed. We find that very disappointing, and we're not sure the officer understands the gravity of the issues that occur on the road day to day. Karratha Avenue is unsafe to all and should be sealed as a matter of urgency. The submission lists 19 issues that have occurred in a short period and includes some graphic photos of broken legs, vehicles crashing into houses, cars sliding into gutters, young child falling off a bike while his mother walks her down the street, people falling off motorbikes, numerous people can't get their cars up the road, the delivery trucks struggle to get up and cut the roads up, and people losing their footing and falling and laying in the middle of the road, sore, scared and afraid. There are undoubtedly many more incidents that occur and have occurred in the past and will occur in the future. This demonstrates the hazards and how unsafe Karratha Avenue is. We also have issues when we have heavy rain. Because it's a gravel road on a steep hill, the water pushes the gravel into the gutters overflow and the water flows into the houses on the lower side of the road. We believe any reasonable person would expect council to have a duty of care to provide a safe environment for its ratepayers and its visitors. Karratha Avenue isn't safe. Any damage caused by these incidents or future incidents potentially exposes council to litigation and damages, which I expect far exceeds the cost of sealing, let alone the personal harm and the property damage to the people involved. We believe sealing Karratha Avenue will reduce maintenance costs, avoid potential legal costs and litigation costs, and provide a safer environment for all. The draft budget allocates around about $3 million for road improvements and renewal work. Recent times, funds have been spent in the Woodridge estate removing asphalt and resealing existing roads that to a layperson look perfectly good. So, has the council got its priorities correct? Should they reseal a safe road or should they reseal an unsafe road?
I'm going to have to interrupt you. You've actually gone over time now.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much.
That's all right. Could I say one last thing? Just, if you're not sealing, will just cause the incidents to continue, the hurt and harm to continue, and the exposure to litigation and potential damages. Thank you for your understanding.
Thank you, Dale. Do councillors have any questions? Thanks, Councillor Peck.
So just by the nature of the submission, it talks about mitigation of risks and hazards. This is not the first time that you've written to council and raised these issues, or is this the first time?
So during the year, I moved to Wattle Glen, Manish Road I'm in, but the borders on that, the start of January last year. So then the incidents started to occur and I started to make the council aware of those sorts of things. But my understanding is years ago, and I can't tell you when, the residents at the time put in a submission for a special scheme. Is that the terminology?
Special charge scheme, yes.
Special charge scheme.
Good.
But that come out at something like, I'm led to believe, $20,000 to $26,000 per resident, and the residents knocked that back. But I'm not sure when that was. I think it's substantially a long time ago, because discussions I've had with the people, no one said, oh, you can't do that, or you can't do this, or things like that.
So I think generally on special charge schemes, there's a period of 3 years where officers won't investigate it again, but it sounds like it's longer than 3 years ago.
Yeah.
You can run it up with your neighbours again, and it might well get support.
So council, after I spoke to them a number of times, they said you can do a special scheme, and there's a number of options. So they actually wrote a letter out to the residents, and the response was there was interest, but no official interest. So the council didn't want to take it any further. And I think the reason is people still have in their mind $26,000 each. They're probably struggling to pay their mortgages, and therefore they're saying a special charge scheme is not really the option. The council has a duty of care to provide a safe environment, and the residents, I believe, think that's not being provided, and they're being put at risk, and therefore they're expecting the council to make it safe.
Okay, thank you. It's
right.
not how it works, but anyway.
Yeah.
Any other councillors have any questions?
Probably just one for the officer. I just
Yes.
can ask this submission to be referred to the risk management team, and we'll get the officer's advice. Council will get the officer's advice on the risks associated with this road in particular.
Yep.
If some of this holds weight, it might move it up the list in terms of priorities. May or may not, but we can get that assessed internally.
Well, I suppose the fact broken legs, people falling over, they just on a steep
Yeah,
hill.
the majority of the road network in Nillumbik is unsealed. We've got a limited budget. We can't, you know.
But I'm not sure they're on a hill with a 20% gradient.
Yeah, most roads that are sealed are done at the time of subdivision.
Yeah.
People that move into unsealed areas generally pay for the sealing of the road at some later point.
Thank you,
Sorry.
Councillor Perkins. We will get some more information as Councillor Perkins has asked. So thank you for coming in.
That's right, pleasure. Thanks for listening.
We've now got Patrick Delizio, the General Manager of Diamond Valley Basketball Association, to come and speak to us. And you have 3 minutes or so. Thank you.
The Diamond Valley Basketball Association currently has 6,500 active participants from the ages of 5 through to 70 years old playing basketball, making it the largest sporting organisation in Nillumbik Shire and one of the largest in the state. The association has seen a growth of 30% participation since return to play from COVID in 2021, which sustained through the subsequent lockdowns and lifted restrictions on community sport. Leaving the Nillumbik Shire with 6% participation rate of basketball alone. And it's the highest participation rate for any LGA in the state with over 500,000 active players of basketball. The Yarrambat Basketball Club alone have over 570 members, no home stadium, no home court, scattered across multiple schools and venues. Obviously, with our amazing facilities that we have right now, it caters for most of our basketball activities. However, the rapid increase in registrations, we're now scattered across 27 courts on a Saturday spread around Nillumbik, Banyule, Wildersley region. All courts at Diamond Valley are used for senior competitions and trainings the other 6 nights of the week, so that's just on a Saturday. DVBA reached out to Nillumbik Council's Director of Operations and Infrastructure, Hjalmar Philippe, last year, in 2022, and at the meeting, the stats were laid out and a request for an indoor facility strategy was presented. The response was that the DVBA were to drive the project and supply the deeper analytics to help inform the strategy and apply for the funding at next opportunity. We have since done that. The results are included in the submission. So I'm not here today to ask for more courts. All I'm asking for is a strategy, an indoor facility strategy, so we can accurately predict what facilities we need for all indoor sports in Nillumbik for years to come. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillors, do you have any questions? Thank you, Councillor Perkins.
So just the strategy, Patrick. In terms of the budget, have you any idea how much the facility strategy would cost?
It's so variable. So I could have put in that it will cost $250,000. It could cost $50,000. Could cost $25,000. It's so variable across. I asked probably about 6 or 7 other associations that have gone through the same thing with their councils of the same sort of size, and it literally varied between those costs. So it'd have to be, we'd have to work together to find that exact. I know it's not a super great answer coming to this sort of thing, but it is so variable and how deep you want to go into it and how long the strategy has to be. From my understanding, there hasn't been one done here since 2012. If anyone knows any better than that, but as far as I'm aware, that's the last time one was done here, which led to the eventual building of the extra, really an extra 3 courts, not an extra 8 courts, an extra 3 courts of what we've got here now. So, yeah. So to answer your question, I don't have an exact figure.
Extra 3 courts on top of the existing non-compliant course that you couldn't
Correct,
really
it was 5.
play competition on.
Correct, it was 5 there, and now it's gone to 8.
Which are competition level? All of them?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep, correct.
So there was 5 that none of them were competition level.
No, they were all competition level.
Okay.
They were all competition level. To the standard of when they were, to the standard now.
Yeah, the standards
it
changed.
depends on what competition exactly.
Yeah.
Any higher level, there's probably still only 4 of them are up to the standard.
So I suppose my sort of thing is that not only did council provide additional courts, it upgraded the existing ones to a higher level.
Correct.
Councillor
than the
Perkins, do you have a question?
No. Well, I do, and I think I asked it. And I think my response is that we need to work out how, if we're going to include it in the budget, we need to work out
Of course.
how much. So anyway,
I thought instead of putting in a random number, because it was so variable, that's why I didn't throw one in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other councillors have any questions? Okay, thank you so much for coming in tonight.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
We now have Elizabeth Doig, Nillumbik Climate Action Team. You also have 3 minutes.
I might move it. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the draft Nillumbik budget. We'd like to advocate for the inclusion of an allocation in the upcoming budget to develop an urban forest strategy. We understand that at present, funding for an urban tree canopy program is slated to come out of the Council's biodiversity strategy, and there is no provision for a separate standalone strategy. We consider that the issue of urban forest management is too critical to be subsumed under an existing strategy for the following reasons. Between 2014 and 2018, the Shire of Nillumbik's overall canopy cover decreased by 3%, from 30% to 27%, according to Victorian Government land data. It's estimated that this decrease is continuing at the rate of approximately 1% per year. The factors contributing to this include vegetation clearing due to bushfire risk mitigation, housing development patterns, natural loss that is not replaced, bushfires and reduced natural regeneration of bushland due to a hotter, drier climate, weed invasion, and feral animals such as rabbit and deer. It's clear that in order to halt this process of attrition, let alone reverse it, a proactive approach to vegetation replacement and enhancement in Nillumbik will be needed in bushland environments and in the urban parts of the Shire. Dr. Greg Moore from the Burnley School for Ecosystem and Forest Science advocates for a minimum canopy cover of 30% in all municipalities across Melbourne. While we have the privilege to live in a beautiful, leafy part of Melbourne, we cannot continue to take this for granted. Urban forestry is the science and art of managing trees, forests, and natural ecosystems in and around urban communities to maximise the physiological, sociological, economic, and aesthetic benefits that trees provide society. The benefits of urban forests are many and span the environmental, economic, and community domains. I won't list the environmental benefits here, they're well known, but less well known are the community and health benefits, which include reduced sun exposure, improved community cohesion, a sense of place and identity, connection with nature, increased outdoor activity, improved mental and physical well-being, and reduction in heat-related illnesses. Economic benefits include energy savings, increased property values, decreased infrastructure damage costs from flooding, decreased health costs, and carbon trading benefits. Therefore, urban forests, as distinct from natural environments, involve the interface between ecosystems, people, and the built environment, and their function is defined primarily in relation to the benefits they can provide the human population in the context of urban spaces. We consider that the differences merit the development of a separate strategy with independent guiding principles, strategies, and targets, its own specialised staff, and its own budget.
Wow, that was well timed. Fantastic. Councillors, do you have any questions of Elizabeth? Thanks, Councillor Payne.
Elizabeth, we had Dr. Greg Moore present to us on the urban tree canopy, and he said that the vast majority of the decline in Melbourne, which is about 1% a year, is on private land. So in terms of a strategy, what would you suggest we do to mandate residents protect their own trees in their own backyards?
Yes, private property is a really tricky one. I mean, I think the biggest problem there is the bushfire management strategies that are in place at the moment that allow individuals, private individuals, to clear, and I forget the statistics, but you know, since 2009 bushfires, it's a large percentage. Is it 20 metres or around the home? And this is really fraught. I mean, I know bushfire management is a really difficult area for the council, and councils are rightly risk averse, but it results in the clearing of so much canopy, and I would love to hear a way that can be managed differently, because I think it's one of the biggest threats to our canopy and our biodiversity, because we're losing our garden spaces, we're losing all of those areas, particularly undercover, the understory and the middle canopy are being lost due to clearing, and often the canopy because people are scared of trees.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Thank you, Councillor Perkins.
It's more to the officer. I hope you don't mind, Rosa, but perhaps you could just run us all through the 1030 and the 1050 rule and briefly, and council's ability to amend state government legislation. And the 1030 and the 1050 rules are those ones that give exemptions for clearing native vegetation within 10 metres of your property, or lower level stuff within 30 metres or 50 metres, I believe. But Rosa might be able to give us a quick rundown. Thank you, Rosa.
Through the chair. I might start with the advocacy bit, because I think that so with the bushfire provisions in the planning scheme, they are set by government and they are the standard across all planning schemes. What happens is council has an advocacy role to play with regard to those provisions, and every year we are asked also to review the mapping surrounding I suppose those areas that are identified as bushfire prone or under the BMO. And we undertake that, but there are certain regulations and guidelines as to how they are mapped, and when you're reviewing the mapping you have to abide by those regulations or those guidelines that the government has set up, which makes it extra difficult to justify, I guess, a reduction in some of those areas. That's not to say that no reduction occurs, but some reduction does occur, very, very minimal, across the whole of the state. So our efforts are mainly focused, in addition to reviewing the maps, to advocacy work, and we undertake that very often. Direct letters to ministers and government departments and to surrounding councils to support our advocacy efforts, and we provide justification via, I suppose, examples, Nillumbik case examples, where there's been a clear felling of all the vegetation on the land, which is contrary to what the 1030 and the 1050 rules that exist in the planning scheme. So there's very clear evidence to show. So we go above and beyond and we do all of that advocacy effort, and unfortunately this hasn't resulted in any significant changes or in a meaningful way to the Nillumbik planning scheme. So there is a lot of effort that goes behind the scenes to advocate for change that is more appropriate, noting that bushfire risk is quite high in this shire, and you know, it can't be diluted. So, you know, there is that 1030 rule and there is the 1050 rule. Basically, what it basically says is that vegetation along a fence line can be cleared to a maximum of, I think, of 4 metres. And then around a habitable dwelling, you can clear vegetation to enable, I suppose, that break, and to enable the safety or security for the occupants within that dwelling. So, and these are statewide provisions, and we have no ability to vary those provisions in any way, unfortunately. The work we do is through our neighbourhood character study and strategy, and reviewing, I suppose, the planning scheme. Every 4 years we're required to review the planning scheme for its effectiveness and its if there's any mistakes or anything along those lines. We do that very diligently. And are in the process of trying to, I guess, through the neighbourhood character strategy, identify other means to be able to strengthen our planning scheme as much as possible, to remove the ability for persons to remove vegetation that shouldn't or has no reason to be removed other than a personal interest, I guess.
Thank you, Rosa. Could I just ask, do you think your advocacy position would be strengthened if there was a
unfortunately, you're not allowed to ask questions, but you could follow that up with an email. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions? And I'm not looking at Councillor Perkins. Any other councillors? Okay, thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
We now have Mitzi Took. Welcome.
Thank you for the opportunity to make a submission to the Council draft budget and to talk to my submission. I would like to see funds allocated in the budget for an urban forest strategy to be developed for Nillumbik. The urban forest is the trees and the vegetation in the public and private realm in our urban environment, right where we live, which involves proactive management of its ecosystem. It is patently obvious to me that the tree canopy and vegetation in our townships, in both the public and private realms, has been under many threats for a number of years and is at risk of becoming considerably diminished under the combined assault of these threats if it is not managed as an urban forest with a well thought out strategy. Our urban forest not only contributes in many ways to neighbourhood character and community well-being, but is highly important in cooling our suburbs and mitigating against the heat island effect, and will become more so as we experience high temperatures. It is therefore clear to me that the urban forest needs to be managed as an entity in its own right, possibly as part of the Climate Action Plan with a separate strategy. I note in the draft budget under Place and Space, management of the urban tree canopy is included under the Council's new biodiversity strategy. I feel this is insufficient management for the urban forest. Subsuming urban tree canopy under the biodiversity strategy blurs the distinction between the urban forest that exists in and among our suburbs and the biodiversity in the natural environment in the less populated, more intact areas of bushland and rural areas of the Shire. Because the urban forest occupies a unique place, it has different requirements and needs to be managed separately from the biodiversity in the natural environment in more rural areas. I therefore advocate managing them separately under different strategies. One of the threats the urban forest faces is state planning laws that do not place the required value on the forest in the private realm. Property developers can cut down trees, strip a block, and construct dwellings boundary to boundary. These laws need to change. A number of councils around Melbourne have developed comprehensive long-term urban forest strategies because they know their urban forests are declining and strategies are needed to protect them.
Wow, you did your 3 minutes as well. Right on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councillors, do you have any questions of Mitzi? Thank you, Councillor Perkins.
So Mitzi, the line about property developers being able to, remove vegetation from boundary to boundary, that's in the urban parts of, some of the urban parts of Nillumbik, or where would that occur?
Yes. It's sort of infill housing, and I'm talking about an urban forest strategy. So managing all the trees and the vegetation, sort of right where we live in the suburbs and townships of Nillumbik.
I'm not sure if I can look to Rosa again. I know there are some areas of the urban parts of Nillumbik where we haven't got the overlays and the necessary planning tools to prevent the complete removal of vegetation, but large parts of Eltham, I believe, do have. Can you just mind talking that for a sec, Rosa, about the overlays that protect vegetation in the urban parts, where they do and perhaps don't exist?
Through the chair. So council is very fortunate to have a large number of overlays that exist in its planning scheme, and those overlays do have controls in there that talk about when you cannot remove vegetation, and by and large, if you're in an overlay, you would require a planning permit to remove a tree. So there is no I guess, ability in those areas to be able to just chop down trees from boundary to boundary. Council has also introduced, luckily enough for us, a new local law. And where there are certain pockets within the Shire where there is no overlay or planning scheme provision with regard to the removal of trees, the new local law now comes into effect and requires you to have a permit from the under the local law to remove trees. So there are very, very, you know, we've got a large number of tree protection controls within our Shire to prevent boundary to boundary removal.
Any other councillors wanting to ask a question? Okay, thank you so much, Metzi. We've now got Justin Kibble, Unit Controller, Vic SES, Nillumbik Unit. And you've also got 3 minutes. Thank you.
If the green light's on, does that mean it's already ready to go? Yep. Cool. Good evening, councillors. My name's Justin Cabell. I'm the new Unit Controller for the Nillumbik SES Unit. I'm representing the 45 proud volunteers that provide rescue services across the wonderful Shire. This unit has a long-standing relationship with the Nillumbik Shire Council and currently operates 2 vehicles that are funded by the council. One of those SES rescue vehicles, a 2012 Toyota Land Cruiser, has reached its end of service at 10 years and is no longer currently meeting safety standards. Therefore, we're requesting in this budget your continued support to fund the replacement of this essential 4-wheel drive rescue vehicle. The new vehicle will be equipped with the latest safety features and capacity to carry all the necessary equipment required for efficient rescue operations. In particular, it will provide and continue to provide the rapid response to technical rescue events, including the extrication of people injured in rugged remote areas around our council, rope rescue, people who are down cliffs or embankments or vehicles that have rolled over cliffs, water rescue, people stuck in fast-flowing water, floodwaters, lakes, dams like Sugarloaf, etc., and other search and rescue responses. The final replacement cost is expected to be in the range of around $80,000, and that's based on a new build price of $120,000 minus the sale price of the existing Land Cruiser, which we think would be around about $40,000. We believe that this investment in our organisation will provide a significant and ongoing benefit to the Nillumbik Shire and the neighbouring communities. This new vehicle will ensure that we continue to provide the essential rescue services and respond effectively to emergency situations, helping the people in the community and making sure they're safe and secure. So in conclusion, we do appreciate your consideration for this funding request and look forward for an opportunity to discuss this with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Any questions? Okay then, thank you so much for coming in. We've now got Jim Connor, the President of Eltham District Historical Society.
Thank you, councillors. As the Chair said, I'm speaking on behalf of the Historical Society tonight. It was encouraging to see a contract awarded at the last council meeting for conservation works for the historic Kangaroo Ground Caretaker's Cottage. And 12 months ago, the beautifully restored Eltham Courthouse was officially opened. Some here tonight may even remember attending that event. It is a credit to council and officers that this valued historic courthouse building has been preserved for future generations to experience. Recently, our Historical Society hosted the first post-COVID school tour there for Year 1 students from Eltham Primary who every 2 years have tours at our precinct. When the courthouse was constructed in 1860, a brick stable was built for keeping a police horse in the rear yard of the adjacent police house. Foundation movements over the years have resulted in the front corner of this stable subsiding to the point where engineering advice was given to council that indicated that it is at an imminent risk of collapsing. When that advice was received, within a day, the building was temporarily fenced off. And so due to these safety concerns, this unstable stable was fenced in July 2022, and the pending funds for heritage and engineering investigations prior to required repair works being undertaken. I note in the draft budget being considered tonight there is provision for capital works on heritage buildings, but no specific allocation of funds for this line item. Can Council please advise whether funds are available to undertake the urgent investigations and remedial works necessary to save this valued heritage building? Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Is there any questions of Jim? Thank you, Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Jim. I don't expect you to have an answer for this necessarily, but is there a ballpark figure that you would have in mind for the restoration of the stable?
No idea, because it would involve heritage investigations, then engineering investigation, then construction. Right. It is not a major, I wouldn't imagine it's a major job. If the corner of the building collapses, it will be a major job. Right. It has some temporary steel supports internally at the moment, but they are only temporary, and we can still see movement occurring on that facade. Right. So I understood that funds were going to be provided in the budget, or hope to be provided in the budget, but I just can't see where they may be. And that was a question I'm asking. Are there funds possibly within that budget?
I can't answer the question. I was firing it back at you, actually, just to see how much. Yeah.
We can have that an officer to respond to that question. Okay. Yeah, from your submission. Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
And just quickly, Jim, was this the first time you've raised the issue, like with officers?
Yes. Well, councillors are aware of it because they had to take urgent action when the engineering advice was given about the risk factor, how risky it was.
Yep.
Because of preliminary investigations, engineering investigations, both externally and internally. And the whole corner of the building is well, you can see it. It's just coming down.
Like I support your ask, but I just sort of say there are other ways to get an answer rather than waiting for the budget process where we know we don't know how much it's going to cost. It's probably not going to get into this budget, but ordinarily if you ask the questions that you're asking of officers,
we understood that
time.
There had been going to be an application within this budget to provide some funds to undertake these works.
Okay, so we'll potentially get that confirmed.
Yeah, and so what I was saying, I can't identify that within the line items there, but it may be within the overall referral or remediation budget there, I don't know.
Yeah, you'd like to understand the breakdown of,
yes.
of the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
And I suppose what does concern me from a broader point of view is that budget extends out for a number of years and there's no provision there specifically for any repairs or maintenance to heritage buildings. And in terms of the overall responsibility of council, perhaps that's something that should be looked on the broader scale.
Okay, thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you.
We now have Katrina Molden. Katrina's not here, okay. Michael McCarthy. No worries, you've got 3 minutes or so.
Thanks for having me. This proposal relates to the Eltham North Dog Park and the closure of access to the Eltham North Ovals of 2 dogs because of the creation of this dog park. The budget, the submission which I've handed out to all councillors talks actually about the budgeting process which established the dog park and when it was built, and when the dogs were banned, I decided to find out what evidence was actually gathered in terms of making this decision. And so I put in an FOI asking about the cost of the dog park, the planning considerations, the annual maintenance for the facility, the cost of repairing ovals caused by the damage from dogs, the current total income received by the Shire from dog registrations.
I found out that the facility cost $840,000. Council paid $564 of that. The site was selected because it met the minimum area prescribed by the state government to gain funding. That there's no annual budget for the maintenance of the new dog park. The estimated cost of repairing damage to all ovals right across the council is $30,000 plus $5,000 for hand top dressing holes. The aggregate percentage of time that I was told that the aggregate percentage of time that the Eltham Oval was used by sporting organisations is 48%. This is in writing from the FOI officer. The income received from dog registrations is approximately $500,000. So if it is $30,000 per oval, and if there are, and I'm only guessing, 20 ovals in the Shire, only 20, then the cost of maintaining an oval to the damage of dogs, which is only an estimation and there was no evidence as to where that estimation came from, that's $1,500 per annum per oval. So we've constructed a facility worth $840,000 and to ameliorate a cost of $3,000 for 2 ovals in Eltham North. That's the justification that's been provided so far. There's no annual budget for the maintenance, that again stated in writing by the FOI officer. So therefore, when the facility was built, there was no consideration of the whole of life costs for this facility. The site was only chosen to meet the minimum site because it met the minimum site requirements. Therefore, there was no consideration whatsoever with regard to whether that size suited the needs of all dogs. The 48% time quoted by the FOI officer is clearly false. Ovals are...
Michael, you've run out of time.
Oh, sorry. I've provided this in writing, and I do encourage councillors to read the conclusion, because I do think there are some serious budgetary weaknesses in the way this project has been administered, and that we do seek the issue to be redressed by restoring the ovals to dogs.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions? Thank you, Councillor Perkins.
So, Michael, just in terms of the ovals, would the ovals still be suitable if they were not fully enclosed?
One of the real advantages of the ovals is that they are fenced, and that enables people to go jogging and their dog to be active off lead, running around, and so it supports the physical health of the dog owner as well as the dogs.
So it wouldn't work as well if we didn't have a fully enclosed fence around the oval?
Most other councils, it would work, but it wouldn't work for every other dog, but it would certainly be a significant benefit.
Because that was when the issue of dogs on ovals became a problem with faeces, of which councillors never had a maintenance budget for, and officers don't remove faeces. They only started appearing when council put fences around these ovals to keep the rabbits out, or for whatever reason. They put the fences around the ovals, and what that effectively did was attract the dogs.
And it created a very attractive space for owners and their dogs.
And far less attractive for parents with young kids who climb into the car full of feces on their back and all over. That's the sort of.
I'm happy to.
Do you have a question?
No, I'll finish. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So you're suggesting that the entire budget is $35,000 for all 20 ovals across the Shire?
That's what I was provided by the FOI officer. That's for repairing ovals to damage caused by dogs.
Yeah. So you don't think that we should do... I guess the question is, wasn't this done in order to protect the ovals to reduce the maintenance costs?
that's what I was told. But if there's 20 ovals, it's $1,500 per oval. Your total budget for maintenance is over $500,000. You can look at the Eltham North Oval now, and you can see even after the little bit of rain that's happened and the soccer net's going up, the oval is being ground down to nothing already. The damage done by dogs is minuscule. There was no evidence provided by this estimate with regard to 30 plus 5. There was no evidence as to how that estimate was came to.
Do you have a question? No. Okay. Councillor Ramtran?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I didn't receive a copy of your submission, so it'd be good if you could email it to me.
I can give you one now, but I can email it as well.
Yeah, thanks. I do much better with email, so
Yeah, sure.
yeah, feel free to send it through. Thanks, Katia. Wonderful. I'll give that a read. I guess Councillor Perkins certainly alluded to the problem we have, where you don't want kids playing on an oval where they're going to fall over and get a face full of dog poo. So how would you suggest we manage that? If we let dogs back on the oval, it is going to be unavoidable. How do we manage that to reduce?
Yeah, and I agree. And
that issue?
As a dog owner who goes on the oval and sees somebody's left their dog's remains there, I get annoyed and I pick it up. And so, and I accept that is an issue. But the situation is that other councils, and it's in my written submission, other councils, including Banyule and even including Yarra at Victoria Park, where Collingwood play AFLW standard competition, they have dogs on that oval less than an hour before the game started and within an hour after the game finished. So other councils can manage it. The question is, and also in my FOA I asked, did the council officers, when they made this decision, I asked the question about what investigations they made about what other councils were doing, and the answer was none. So the situation is that the decision was made to ban dogs, and that's another aspect is that there was consultation with regard to the design of the new dog park, but as part of that consultation, there was no discussion about banning dogs from the ovals. I wasn't interested because I'm not interested in a little pocket park dog park. I've got two kelpies that ramble, go everywhere at 100 miles an hour. So, and it's not safe in that dog park. It's absolutely not safe.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Michael. Any other questions?
Look, it might be a question for officers, but my understanding of the provisions in the local law around dogs on oval in Nillumbik, and have been for a long time, is the ovals where you can have a dog on an oval, the dog needs to be on a lead.
I've been living in Eltham North since 1986,
yep.
And my dogs have been off the lead for that entire
Well,
time.
you're very lucky you haven't been prosecuted, because it's a breach of local law. Well, we can refer to local law and we can get them to push a bit harder in terms of policing the local law, but that's the situation. Either there are some ovals, Diamond Creek's an example, where there's no dogs allowed at all, on lead or off leash. The rest of them, the dogs have to be on the leash. Now, I stand to be corrected, but that's the situation.
And it's not being enforced.
That's not
and it's not
like a lot of the parking provisions.
It's just not appropriate.
Councillor Perkins, was that a question for officers or not?
I just wanted to confirm whether that's a fact, but I'm pretty sure it is. But perhaps Rosie can get back to us.
Take that on notice. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. We've now got Kath Moore. You've got 3 minutes as well.
So I'm speaking in a similar vein to Michael and his queries. I've lived in Eltham North for the past 10 years, and one of the things that I value about this area is the sense of community that dog ownership provides. I used to meet locals regularly at both the Redbacks and the Adventure Playground ovals. As with many other residents, it was here that I could exercise and socialise with my dog in walking distance from my home. So I'm interested if Council could again provide evidence that dogs and dogs alone are creating this supposed $30,000 worth of damage to ovals. I believe that the impact of birds and sporting activities is being minimised by Council while elevating the impact of dogs so as to justify the decision to ban dogs altogether. It also seems to me that complaints from the soccer club are being prioritised as a further justification. Dog owners contribute revenue through registrations and rates, and to value one community group over another in this way seems like divisive governance that contradicts council's commitment to providing shared use ovals for the whole community. To then threaten dog owners with fines instead of providing information and communication was a wasted opportunity to engage with community. The idea of a designated dog park is in principle a good one. In reality, almost $900,000 has been spent on a space that fails to provide a safe, sustainable or practical solution for varied requirements of responsible dog ownership. Building one in a floodplain means constant maintenance, areas fenced off and wet, muddy patches will always be an issue. I've personally witnessed numerous physical altercations between dogs who've inadvertently run into each other or fixtures such as gates and fences. With ball throwing in such a narrow space, there have inevitably been incidents where dogs have run into people. There have been numerous fights between large and small dogs with serious injuries, and it's an anxious making space to be in that I don't enjoy because I anticipate potential issues whenever I'm there. An oval does many things. It provides a buffer of space between groups of dogs, allows dogs to run and humans to exercise together. The current dog park does none of these things. It will always work for smaller dogs, but opening up ovals for larger dogs would reduce the risk of animals and humans getting hurt. And this is an issue about proximity. Many people with mobility issues cannot get to other off-lead ovals. Driving to these ovals contributes to the carbon footprint, and I'm sure council wants to reduce emissions and congestion rather than increase it with suggestions that we go to other places. And this is also an issue about wastage. I walk past underutilised ovals empty for most of the day. Council should be spending money on maintaining ovals that are used by dogs, people and birds. Can council confirm how much is spent on each oval and how much they've budgeted to maintain the dog park that they've built? After the Edendale Ward meeting, a working group with local dog owners was agreed upon. We have not received any replies to our correspondence. So could you also please explain to who is the contact person within council and when they will work with us to find a workable solution to the issues that we've raised tonight? Thanks.
Thank you, Kath. Any questions from councillors? I was at that ward meeting. It wasn't my ward meeting, but I do know that details were taken, and I'll have an officer make note to get back to residents with an update if there is anything at this point. Yep.
We have consistently communicated to council, and nobody has got back to us, so it's frustrating.
I can't take a question from you.
That's not a question, that's a comment.
And it's a statement as well. Yes, I understand that, and I have committed that officers would get back to you. So thank you.
In what time frame? That would be also nice.
I can't commit for that,
question,
but
of course you can't. No, but just putting it out there.
Thank you for coming. All right, we've got Natalie Alessio, President, Haynes Road Playhouse. You've also got 3 minutes.
Thank you. Is that on? Cool. So in regards to my submission, which all of the councillors have received, I'm seeking to reinstate some funding to Haynes Road Playhouse. We currently fall in the 0 to 5 year old category. We run playgroups Monday to Friday. We are the only facility, not only in our shire, but in our area, as far as I know. We've got people coming from all different councils, such as Manningham, Banyule, but most of our enrolments are from our shire. We are at about 60 to 70% at the moment. Since COVID, there has been further increase into the need for our playhouse and what we offer. People needing connection. We are the only place in our area. There is obviously daycares and kinders and stuff, but we are the only thing that offer connection for not only children, but also for families. And we also hit every single demographic in our shire. So we have grandparents bringing kids, we've got mothers and fathers. We're also, as I noted in my submission, that we're the only place that offer somewhere for fathers to come that's structured. to connect and meet other fathers and with their kids in a safe environment. We previously had funding. It was revoked by the council following a couple of tried closures. We've been around for 53 years. We made it through COVID, and it's pretty prominent that our community wants us to stay, and basically the only thing that's holding us back now is support from council. You know, we've had support from higher government in the sense of recognition. We've had support from outside. To be honest, the best thing would be to have some funding from you guys just to improve the image of you guys towards us, and you know, to be able to put that out to our community, because our community is really, really passionate about who we are and what we're about. We've just recently hosted Nil and Bio, their launch. I know that some of you guys were there. This is just showing what our connection is with our community, and we want some funding to be able to offer more and more things to our families, but also to our community, you know, to be able to get kids into aged care homes and, you know, link in with them more so, you know, taking them to different places. We've got obviously Nil and Bio, they're going to come in and help us teach kids about ecology and stuff like that. We try and, through being fully volunteer run, we try and connect with every single aspect of community. So we just need your help, basically.
Thank you so much. Councillors, Councillor Perkins.
Councillor Payne? Do you have a question for the...
I'm sorry he's asked so many questions tonight. I was just ready for that. Please go, Councillor Payne.
So Holmes Road Playhouse is a playgroup?
Yes.
Is it different to other playgroups in the Shire?
I'm not aware of any other playgroups in the Shire, to be honest. I'm aware of preschools.
Yeah.
I'm aware of, but preschools are funded. So at a preschool, you don't have parents coming along. You don't have parents connecting. You've got basically drop off. And we actually have more enrolments than some of the preschools in our Shire.
Which begs the question, if you have that much support, what is it that you need from council? Because the early learning centres are accredited, and that's the idea, that they have trained and accredited people there.
Yep.
This is a different model?
So we have no funding. So basically the only way that we pay our bills is through fundraising and party hire. Obviously preschools receive funding from, you know, state level, local council, whatever, wherever it comes from. Every child that's enrolled, they get funding.
Yes.
So that's what pays their bills and keeps their programs going and pays for their, you know, educators. We can't offer an educator because we don't have the means to do it.
But in your submission, you're asking for an educator, aren't you? For a few days a week?
Which would, for a couple of days a week, to help us add programs into our...
An accredited, trained educator?
Yeah, so to help us out with toy rotation, to help us out with, you know, some admin, to help us out with what other programs we could offer to our kids, you know, rather than just coming straight from parents that generally aren't trained in that, you know.
That's right, but to do that, wouldn't you have to get the accreditation that all the other early learning centres have to have an educator there?
I am not sure.
Okay. Because I think there's a bunch of legal things that we have to go through for that to happen.
Yeah. Do you have another question?
I do. You've said that council attempted to shut the place down twice?
Yes.
I was of the understanding that council tried to come up with a program to keep Holmes Road Playhouse going twice.
Okay, well, I was just under the impression that it was blatantly in the media. There was people protesting in the streets. So that was my understanding of... I mean, from what my understanding, there is pictures and stuff of rallies going on. So, yes,
it might be
try to shut it down.
Worth getting an update from Corinne. Could you talk to that, please?
Yeah. Can I also ask Corinne, just to talk about the early years services across Nillumbik in terms of the broader context, which services Nillumbik funds in terms of early years, you know, kinders, playgroups and the like, and perhaps speak to this allegation that council tried to shut down Holmes Road twice. I was on council at that time. I know that not to be true, but Corinne can speak to it as well.
Yep. Thank you, through the chair. So across Nillumbik, there are multiple playgroups and early years education services, including 15 kindergartens and 5 long daycare services.
Yep.
Council doesn't provide funding to any of those services. How Council does support is through its infrastructure program, advice and education, as well as supporting those volunteer committees of management.
Yep.
There was no try for Council to close down Hones Road at any stage. When the decision was made by Council to remove that funding that you spoke of earlier, Council actually employed a consultant to work with Hones Road Committee of Management to come up with a sustainable business model for Hones Road, and spent a lot of time working with the Committee of Management at the time to build that sustainable business model. So that's where Council did support prior to removing that funding with Hones Road, but there was no attempt to close Hones Road down.
So, Corinne, Holmes Road now gets the same funding as other playgroups and other early years services?
Yep, so Council doesn't fund any playgroups, and that was part of the reason when Council was looking at that funding. It was not equitable across all of the playgroups across Council Shire, to have one funded and none of the others funded. So that was part of the decision process in looking at that funding model. So the way that we support playgroups and preschools and long daycare is through infrastructure and through that advice and support with in-kind support.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Thank you for coming in, and we do appreciate the work you do with our community. Thank you. Grant Brooker, Vice President, Friends of Apollo Parkways.
Thank you.
Do you know how to use the microphone?
Yes, I do.
Good. 3 minutes. Only 3 minutes.
Great to be back.
Thanks, Grant.
I'm speaking to support the Friends of Apollo Parkways budget submission, which the officer comment in tonight's papers state Council will consider these works in future budget cycles. I'm encouraged that this accepts in principle the appropriateness of our submission and merely suggests a future budget cycle it may be realised. I am urging you to reconsider that finding and include it in the current 23-24 budget cycle. FOAP recently made an application to Kate Thwaite's office under the Stronger Communities program for $12,500, which would have provided 2 picnic tables and 3 bench seats, including delivery and on-site installation. The application was titled Turning Empty Spaces into Meeting Places, which really encapsulates what we were trying to achieve in the passive recreation area in the Civic Drive precinct. Unfortunately, FOAP was unsuccessful on this occasion, which makes our budget request the last possibility to achieve this for 23-24. For those interested, you can find the application on the FOAP Facebook page. I don't think that any councillor would actually disagree with what FOAP are proposing. Picnic tables and bench seats are part of the 2015 master plan for the area. They would enable community connections to occur, that facilitate social interactions, that improve and enhance community cohesion. The budget 23-24 provides for $150,000 for public open space and infrastructure upgrades. That seems to be the most appropriate line item that this $12,500 can be drawn from, and for the barbecues and fitness stations, which was part of the FOAP budget submission, to be drawn from as well. The budget does not specify where this $150,000 is to be spent, but I do think that there could be an argument that it would be well spent at Civic Drive. I would also make the point the budget really belongs to the councillors. You can accept it with amendments, it is entirely in your hands. So we have a modest project that has widespread local support. It would keep faith with the community for council aspirations for the area, and it acknowledges that the implementation of the master plan requires a staged approach. There is no time quite like this time and this budget cycle right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. I don't need to ask, do I,
It feels a bit
Councillor
like
Perkins?
Shark Tank. So your ask, former Councillor Brooker, is for $12,500. Or you want to stretch it a bit?
Yes, I do. I mean, the $12,500 we'd done some research about to put in the application for the Kate Thwaites Growing Better Communities Fund, and that was for the bench seats and for the picnic tables. But the master plan talks of fitness stations and barbecues as well. So that portion of it, I can, you know, for what we were thinking about, I can say is $12,500.
So you're asking us to put aside out of that $150,000, which is for
open space
across the
yes,
Shire.
Yes.
You want $12,500 put aside, so it's 12,500.
Yes, and barbecues and fitness stations as to look at that as well.
On top of the 12,500.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I would imagine in terms of what you can read from the budget, that seems the most appropriate line item where this sort of capital expenditure would come from.
And would it all need to be done at once, or is there a budget next year and there's a 1 year after that? And
well,
perhaps, what's the budget
I think
over
that's
lots
an
of years?
extremely good point. I mean, the master plan from 2015 has implemented and has been implemented in various stages. We see the playground from 2018, and this is, I guess, the next thing that we've as a community group have asked for since that time.
And so you'd be happy with small improvements each year?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think that is, you know, the hard work's been done, really. It's now a kind of an incremental approach of doing things gradually year by year, I think.
Thank you, Grant. Anyone else? Any other questions? Thank you for coming in then.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Our second last presenter for the night, or actually speaker, sorry, Rachel Deans, committee member, Eltham Lacrosse Club. You've got 3 minutes also.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. So councillors and staff, I'm here today to talk about the playing surfaces at Eltham Lower Park. And so I just wanted to provide a little bit of context. There's 2 ovals at Eltham Lower Park that are currently used by Eltham Lacrosse Club during the winter season. The northern oval, which is closest to the miniature railway station, is great during summer, but as soon as we get a bit of rain, becomes a bit of a quagmire and quite frankly really difficult to use and unsafe and unsuitable for playing and training. Ironically, although we're very grateful, there's just been a set of lights installed on that ground, which is fantastic, but a bit, you know, unusual given that we can't usually use the ground. The other main oval to the south is our main ground, and I don't mean to upset people, but there's intense dog use on that ground, which leads to, you know, it's got a very heavy load that it's carrying. We have to shift all of our training and games to that oval quite frequently. And we also find that that oval ends up getting closed. So last year that oval was closed. We obviously couldn't host games or training on it. And even when the oval is open, we find that other clubs actually don't want to come and play on it. So with increased numbers of juniors, and a change in association fixturing, which is to encourage women and men to play on the same day, we find ourselves in a really difficult position. And so we're seeking an urgent response from council to fix our grounds so that we can play safely on them. And I do note in the officer response in the budget papers that there was indication that a proposal would be developed for funding in next financial year's budget, so 24-25. It was a little bit unclear if that was an internal process, and so we would certainly want to seek clarification if that is an officer developing a proposal to have something included in the capital budget. The other, I guess, question or thing I wanted to raise was I assume that councillors have seen the 10-year capital program and are quite comfortable and have enough information with the projects listed in that program to make an informed decision about the budget and the state of the assets. That's it.
Thank you, Rachel.
That's okay.
Councillor Perkins.
Just a couple of quick questions. You know, there's a northern oval and a southern oval by the sound of it.
Yeah.
the southern oval, there's still dogs running around on both ovals, or have they been banned?
Yeah, no, there's dogs on both ovals, but higher intensity on the fenced oval.
Okay, so, and that's still allowed?
Yes.
It's on the
Oh, well, I
Eltham
don't know
North.
whether it's allowed, but it happens.
Yeah, it can still happen. The attitude of the club would be a preference for no dogs on those ovals, or for
You're
the club?
trying to
No, I'm asking a question.
bring me into
Yeah.
conflict with others here.
No.
Look, it increases the load on the ground, and we do need to clean up frequently after dogs. Yeah, it's not ideal, but it's what happens when there's no suitable alternative for dog walkers.
So in terms of what needs to happen on both ovals, it's irrigation and drainage to improve the playing surface, is that?
Significant drainage works, and
Yeah.
it has, I understand it is a very high cost, and in fact in the budget papers it estimated $1.5 million.
Yep.
So
And how would you imagine that council would find the money?
well, through their asset renewal, they need to be considering all assets across the.
How about Sport and Recreation Victoria grants?
That would be fine,
'Cause
but we are
that's-
feeling pretty frustrated because it's been
Yeah.
going on.
So
for years.
SRV, and that is, it doesn't matter which oval it is or which sort of sporting service needs to be improved across the Shire. That's our opportunity, because then we have the state government paying for half the, at least half of the upgrade.
Yeah.
So it's just look out for SRV grants. I know it's not a question, but it started as a question. SRV, there's no $1.5 million floating around that we can allocate tonight.
That's definitely not a question, though.
Oh, well, okay, sorry.
Any other questions of Rachel?
I have one.
Thank you.
If someone was lucky enough to find a grant at some stage, but it was only enough to do one of the ovals, which would be prioritised, the fenced or the unfenced?
I'd need to double check. Yeah.
From the lacrosse point of view, would it be the fenced oval as the home ground
I
or not
assume so,
necessarily?
though we now have a very large ground that we can't use that's got lights on it as
Right,
well.
yeah.
But common sense says it would be the main oval.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Rachel, you also said that other clubs don't want to play on the oval. Why is that? Because it's too
in
mushy?
such poor condition.
Okay.
And so we have teams not wanting to, we train or play there. So they don't want, it's got a very bad rap across the association.
Thank you.
That's good.
Our last speaker for the night is Sue Diet, Secretary, Eltham Community Action Group.
Topic that I want to talk on is tree canopy, and I didn't know that other people were going to speak on that. It's not a combined thrust. The photos that I've given you are, yes, on private land, but it just shows the impact on tree canopy that a few developments can have. In our submission, we suggested some actions that council could take, and I'd like to explain in a little bit more detail what might be helpful, because if you're talking about budget and priorities, figures count. Now, council does not keep statistics on how many trees permits are granted for the removal of. So if there was a line in the planning tick the box exercise, sorry, officers, that you do that says this was 3 trees being removed here, 4 trees being removed there, you would get an impression as to what was happening in which streets. Therefore, if you know that, for instance, Brougham Street or Livingston Street in Eltham come to mind, where there is heavy development because of subdivision, maybe in those areas we ought to do some street tree planting. And that brings me to council does not keep the number of trees that council removes themselves for whatever reason in streets or within parks. Trees have a natural lifespan, and I can understand that council responsibly, having done an audit of all council parks, have cut back and has removed a number of trees. But you don't know how many have gone. So how can you budget for replacement trees? We need to, once you've decided on which streets are being heavily subdivided, we need a plan to put in street trees there. So that budgetary knowledge that you have acquired from counting how many trees have gone will need the budget to be changed to amend this. Maybe you also need to think about an incentive program for residents to look after their tree when they've been planted. And then you've got within council parks the need for succession planting. And I've run out of time. Can somebody ask me a question?
And I was taking notes and I didn't notice, so thank you for telling me that you went over time. Is there any questions? And I'm sure there is on this side. Is there any on this side of the room to start with? No. Are you sure? Okay. Thank you, Councillor
It's
Perkins.
not one of Sue, it's one to the officer, and in this case, Vince, our Director of Infrastructure Services. Is it a fact that we did not know how many contractors we engaged to cut down trees? Or can we find out how many trees that Nillumbik removes from public land every year?
I'd have to take that on note in terms of number of trees. We know the number of contractors we engage, but the actual number of trees, I'd have to take that on note.
But it's a number, we could find out, surely.
I'll take that on note.
Yep.
Thanks for the submission, Sue. So ECAG are asking to improve the tree canopy by 30% like Hobson's Bay, to expand the street planting program, and to come up with an incentive program to get residents to maintain trees on nature strips.
Yes.
Any idea where we would find the funds to do those things?
It's up to your job to organise the priorities.
Okay.
I was going to talk about succession tree planting. Trees have a natural lifespan. I'll tell you a story. About 5
Can I just check, are we allowed stories? Just one moment, please.
Historic stories.
Okay, very briefly.
Right. About 4 or 5 councils ago, I got the council of the day to enable, and I'm wearing a different hat now, Friends of Diamond Creek that work in Eltham Lower Park, to do succession planting within Eltham Lower Park. I drove past Eltham Lower Park this evening and I wasn't able to see the sports oval because we had decided that some of our succession planting would be along the drain in the front of the park. Why did we do that? Because we knew the pine trees would have to come down. Last year, the pine trees came down. There are 15 and 20-year-old trees now, leaving a green entrance in the park. That's the sort of thing you can do with succession planting that doesn't cost council much, because the volunteers are willing to put the trees in the ground. So,
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you for your story. It makes sense, succession planting. Any other questions? Only questions? No? Okay, thank you so much, Sue. That was the last one for the night. We made it. All right. Now, I dropped all my papers, so I just need to find... thank you. Oh, yes, we've got to do the recommendation. Sorry, I was about to close the meeting. Okay. Do I have a councillor to put forward the motion, please? Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to move that the committee, acting under delegation from Council, 1, receives and notes the submissions received in respect of the draft budget 2023-2024, attachments 1 and 2, in accordance with the section 96 of the Local Government Act 2020. 2, considers the matters contained in the submissions in the committee's report during finalisation of the budget. 3, acknowledges presentations made to the committee. 4, resolves that the confidential, unredacted submissions contained in attachment 2 remain confidential on the grounds specified in the definition of confidential information in section 3.1 of the Local Government Act 2020. And 5, recommends the adoption of the 23-24 budget at the 23 May 2023 Council meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Payne. Would you like to speak?
I would, thank you. I'd like to start by thanking all the submitters. It was actually really refreshing to have so many people from the community, and I guess it shows what we're so blessed to have here in Nillumbik. So many people with so many ideas and so much passion. Not a single speaker tonight came complaining about the amount of money that they have to pay in rates. We all understand what rates are. They're a necessary evil that keeps the council going and enables us to do good things for our community. And instead, all of you came to us with ideas about good things that we could do for the community. So thank you for that. It really is refreshing to see. Just to respond to some of the speakers, and I only have 5 minutes, I've already used 40 seconds, so I'll have to be very brief. So Dale spoke about road sealing, and it is a challenge that we have here in Nillumbik. We have hundreds of kilometres of unsealed roads, and many of them pose issues to the residents who live there. So we do need to look at special charge schemes. We do have a sealing program, around 400,000 a year off the top of my head, which is used to seal those roads, but that's based on priorities. And we do need to review the way that we put those priorities together, because at the moment the priority criteria are a bit unclear. So clarifying them and weighing things up against the priorities in a more thorough manner will get a better result. But at the end of the day, the only way to fast track the sealing of your road is to have a special charge scheme done. Mitzi, Elizabeth and Sue, thank you for talking about tree canopy, one of my passions. We do have a dedicated bucket of money in this current financial year's budget. It's not part of that biodiversity funding. It is a separate bucket of money, about 50k, which is dedicated specifically for putting together an urban tree canopy strategy. That is being rolled in with the work on the biodiversity strategy in order to streamline things, but they are certainly 2 separate line items there, and we will be doing a thorough job on that. So there is work coming. It is going to get done. But then down the track, once it's done, we'll need to start on the implementation, which is very important. Sue mentioned counting trees that are removed. There was actually a report by the Victorian Auditor General's Office, and it was at the time the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, now split up into 2 separate departments. It was their job to count the trees that are removed across Victoria, and Vargo found that they only estimate it. They don't collect that data. And the estimate is subject to high variability and poorly quantified levels of uncertainty. So it does speak to the challenges that we have, and while council can play a role in that, we are limited unless the state government departments actually come to the table and do that counting properly, which is what Vargo found in their report. So I encourage everybody to read that. It's called Offsetting Native Vegetation Loss on Private Land. Jim, the stable, I think, taking care of our old heritage buildings is incredibly important. We don't want to be guilty of demolition by neglect, but it can be very, very expensive, as we found with the Kangaroo Ground War Memorial Park cottage. So we'll need to go on a priority list, and we'll need to find out from officers what was suggested for this budget, and also whether there are cheaper things we can do to just retain it in the short term. Michael and Kath, in terms of dogs on ovals, I think, we've already had the discussion about poo and the impacts that can have on people. I'd also question whether it's relevant to budget discussions, but outside of the budget discussions, I think we need to have a broader chat just about the options are, but we do have to manage that issue with poo on ovals. It is a hazard to the users, and it makes the use very unpleasant, and the ovals are there to be played on. So we need to, it is a situation that needs to be managed carefully. Natalie, for Hones Road Playhouse, we do have to allocate funding fairly across all of our community groups. We don't fund Kinder, it's funded by the state. And so our role really needs to be supporting you to improve your business model so that you can make the organisation viable. Grant, I also support implementing the master plan for Apollo Parkways. I note your sensory garden idea, and I think that would be a fantastic candidate for place shapers. So please get involved with the Place Shapers program, which will actually give you the opportunity to make that happen outside of the council budget cycle. And hopefully in a future budget we can make the rest of it happen too, because I think we do need to implement those master plans that we've committed to. And I'm almost out of time, but Rachel, 1.5 million, it's a lot of money. I think in future budget cycles we need to consider how it may be done, but it will be a challenge. But thank you for bringing that to our attention. In terms of some of the good things in our budget that I might run through in 5 seconds, Chair?
You've got 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Thank you, Chair. You doubled it. Over $100,000 to support environmental volunteering efforts. Implementation of our new local law to protect tree canopy. Implementation of the neighbourhood character strategy, which again will help to protect tree canopy. Turning Edendale into a climate action hub. Supporting place shaping programs, such as Grant Brooker's idea about the sensory garden for Apollo Parkways. Funding for a youth hub, funding for a carers hub, funding to finish the Wattle Glen urban design framework, and also funding to begin work on our housing strategy. So some really exciting stuff in there. And again, thank you to all the speakers tonight and everyone else who submitted.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, Councillor Payne.
I have not much to add to Mayor Rantran's summary of tonight. The fact that you're all in the chamber and have presented what would add up to be a few $1 million worth of budget suggestions probably tells you the awkward position that we're in. We cannot keep everyone happy. And it's not because we don't walk our dogs, play sport, love the trees, live in this community and deal with and look after our kids. We know that that's important. We have limited resources and we have to allocate them as best we can, and that's really what the budget's all about. We have heard you tonight. We absolutely understand what you're saying, and we have taken that on board, and we will, to the best of our ability and living within our means, see if we can accommodate the different and competing needs of the community. That's what we're here to do. And if we can't keep everyone happy, I do apologise, but that is the nature of local government. So thanks for coming along.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to support the motion. I think it's a good one. I think the Mayor, Ben, has ran through the items really well. I might just start from the bottom up. A couple of my thoughts. Sue died. In terms of the data, there's no reason why we can't collect that data, and we'll push that happens. I think it makes sense to actually know how many trees we as a council are removing, and we should have no net loss of tree canopy on land that we own and control. So we can certainly, I think, seek to get some data there and move forward with that. Rachel, Sport and Recreation Victoria is the answer there. Look at the grant process, get the club to get in the best position possible to put up a good grant application. It was a $1.5 million project, and council ends up only having to pay for a third or a half of that. It puts you ahead of the game, particularly if you get to a point where the club can do some fundraising. Certainly, there's many clubs that have some money that support their own infrastructure upgrades, not pay the whole lot, but to provide a contribution. There are many sporting clubs that even borrow money. Go to Bendigo Bank or another bank, borrow money, and seek council approval for council to what's it called, Vince? Guarantee their loan. So that's something that council has done for a long time. Is where we can't provide the money to support them however we can. Certainly, putting in a grant application to the state government is the best one, but supplemented by some other monies from the club. Grant on the face of it, $12,500 within the next 12 months. May or may not happen. Can't make any promises, but it's on the on the radar there. I think it's a reasonable ask, given that we've endorsed a master plan. There's no reason why that shouldn't happen. The fairness and equity around Holmes Road Playhouse, we've discussed that infinitum over the last 4 or 5 years. You were lucky to receive funding for a number of years, but it was a contentious point, year upon year upon year, because I've been on council 13 years and the office has always recommended that we really shouldn't be providing this standalone funding for one playhouse or one early years services where we don't do it for any other. So it came down to just trying to apply rate money fairly across the Shire in terms of how and why that decision was made. The dogs on the oval, it's an ongoing issue. I respect that. It's you've had something, it's been taken away. In terms of Coventry and Marngrook, when the dogs were banned on the 2 ovals in Diamond Creek, there was community outcry, which I weathered. Now the ovals are in much better condition than they ever have been. The sporting groups and the wider population certainly appreciate the changes there. The dog owners still don't. It's fair to say that the dog owners still don't like the Diamond Creek Dog Park, and they would much prefer to run their dogs around on Marngrook and Coventry Oval. But there's a bigger picture at play there. Jim, the unstable stable needs to happen. It needs to, but we need to understand how much, whether or not we can apply for some grant funding or get some help to do those repairs. But it certainly does need to happen. I agree.
Councillor Perkins, you've gone over time.
And I just want to say that Justin, I did speak to Justin, but the ask for help with the vehicle that we purchased 10 years ago, it's now going to cost $80,000, but that's $8,000 over each year of 10 years. That's in the budget, so that will happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Any other? Thank you, Councillor Stockman.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to thank everyone for coming in and taking time to come out with you tonight. And we're all listening, as you can tell. So there is a tricky matters with the budget, and there's a lot of other submissions too where people haven't come in, so you can see where it's really hard to shoot out all the monies. And I just wanted to make mention of the 2 people that didn't get their names mentioned, just in a thingy to make it inclusive, and that was Katrina and also Patrick. And Patrick, we all know what a great job you do there. So whether that's that small figure or big figure, it'll certainly be worth looking into. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stockman. I think that's all. I might just say a quick few words, just basically to say thank you for coming in and for obviously reading the document head to tail. It's not easy for some people to understand the budgets and all the workings. I also wanted to acknowledge that Home Roads is not just a preschool, though. It's a reciprocal care model, and it's the only one we have here in Nillumbik. And I know how important that is for young parents to have a small break, so I understand that, so thank you. And I would also like to see that officers are supporting our community groups in applying for grants, such as Councillor Perkins mentioned, for those that can't make the budget, and that we keep up our good relations with our community. So thank you so much. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. We have no supplementary or urgent business. There is no confidential reports. Therefore, I close the meeting at 8:32 p.m. Thank you for coming in and have a good evening and enjoy the